What's going on, everybody? I'm Tyler. This is my last night at TIFF 2019. I just saw the last film on my schedule, and I'm here to let you know that Dolemite Is My Name is no perfect movie. And it centers around Eddie Murphy playing stand-up comic Rudy Ray Moore, who created a persona, a character named Dolemite who was a pimp that mostly spoke in rhyme and became the basis for a series of exploitation films. And I gotta be honest, I wasn't even going to see this movie originally. I've never been a fan of Eddie Murphy, like, in a die-hard way, and seeing him step into a role like this without seeing the movie at first felt like he was just trying to make another comeback after Mr. Church didn't work out. But then I read that the writers for this script were also the ones who wrote Ed Wood, which has some similar themes. So at the last minute, I did buy a ticket for the screening after Bad Education, and I am super glad that this was the last movie that I saw at TIFF, because the director for Midnight Madness at the festival was the one who presented the movie at the screening. He got everybody's blood pumping, everybody was cheering and applauding as loud as they can, and that feeling carried on throughout the entire screening. The audience roared, they clapped, they dug the hell out of this movie, and so did I. And we've seen movies like this before, like I said. We've seen stuff like Ed Wood. We've seen stuff like The Disaster Artist. In fact, we've even seen recreations of blaxploitation films. Anyone who's seen Badass by Mario Van Peebles knows that it's a recreation of Melvin Van Peebles' Sweet Sweetback's Badass song. So this isn't completely out of the ordinary. But what sets this one apart is that it goes a little more in depth into what it takes to make a movie, especially when you have no idea what the hell you're doing and have very, very limited resources, especially in the time period that this movie takes place in. And the things that are similar, the things that we want to be similar, is that this movie is about outsiders who have no idea what the fuck they're doing, but they don't care. They want to create something that they love and hope that they can reach others through it. And those are the key elements that make a movie like this work. And they're elevated even more by an outstanding performance from Eddie Murphy. I'm serious. This is possibly my favorite performance of his of all time. Because there's even a personal element to it if you look at his career. Because dude's made some duds, and regardless of whether you can defend them or not, there are people who like Norbit. There are people who can sit through Beverly Hills Cop 3. And I feel like Murphy brings a bit of an autobiographical feeling to his performance, because even though he's made crap films, I don't really think that he regrets making those movies, just as much as Rudy Ray Moore and his fellow cast and crew members have no regrets making something that is completely cheesy and absolutely makes no sense. It has entertaining stuff like car chases and kung fu fights, and incredibly memorable quotes such as this.
You no business born insecure junkyard motherfucker!
But yeah, Murphy just is so convincing as this underdog character, to the point where 5 minutes in, I forgot it was even him. I just saw Rudy Ray Moore, a guy who was willing to self-distribute anything he had in order to keep his career going. A guy who was willing to hold a comedy recording session in his living room if it meant getting the material he needed. And he was someone who was not looking for permission to create something, which was something the program director was especially proud of with this movie, and rightfully so. He argues with any studio executive who would disagree with him about how vulgar it is, about whether it makes sense, or even if anybody would want to see it. He didn't care about any of that stuff. If it meant only reaching 5 people in one theater, he would be proud of himself. And that enthusiasm passes on to his fellow cast and crew members who, of course, all of them have their skeptical moments, but as time goes by and they put their most amount of effort into it, they feel proud. Now, as far as the side cast goes, a lot of people are praising Wesley Snipes also in a return to form as D'Urville Martin, and yeah, he is pretty good. He's effective at playing a pompous actor who is much more well known for the movies he's been in as opposed to the roles that he's had in those movies. And when he's given more control of Dolemite, you can imagine just how that can kind of go to his head, especially when it has this so bad that it's good quality that it kind of messes with him a little bit. Seeing his reactions to Moore's acting and just how crappy the fights are, were hilarious in their own right. And even when they weren't like laugh out loud funny, you were either smiling or your jaw was on the floor just based on Snipes' reactions as well as pretty much anyone's reactions in this movie. But actually, my favorite supporting performance in this movie, and I'm going to try my best to get this right, Divine Joy Randolph as Lady Reid. I did my absolute best. Feel free to call me out in the comments. I really appreciated her performance the most because her relationship with Moore is a lot different than standard biopics. When she first shows up, I feel like, oh great, she's going to be the love interest, they're going to have a love-hate thing, and they're going to split up. That never happens. The two of them are platonic friends and business partners. She's basically his sidekick, one of his hoes, essentially. And what amazed me was the way that Moore legitimately respects her as a performer. When he first sees her, she's being attacked by an abusive boyfriend, but she stands up for herself, and he's just like, she's good. I like that. And that level of respect alone took me by surprise, given the time period that this movie takes place in. But even though he is the one giving her advice on what to do as a performer on stage, it is up to her to accept that advice, and she's brave enough to take it. And it really pays off for her in the end. And as the movie progresses, she gives more advice to him on what he should do to further his career. So it felt like an equal friendship that you don't really see that much in biopics. In fact, there are actually a decent amount of biopic cliches that aren't in this movie. You don't see the tragic past involving an abusive or negligent parent. You don't really see even that much tension about whether or not black people can identify with white people in movies or legitimately only need to see black people in movies to identify. There are moments like that that kind of touch on it, but it's not the main focus. The focus is anyone who is an outsider creating something that they find entertaining. There are some biopic cliches that I felt like they could have avoided for the fact that his other sidekicks, aside from his partner, they don't really have that much to work with. And you have really good celebrities as the side characters. You got Keegan-Michael Key as the scriptwriter who takes himself seriously until he meets Moore and becomes to loosen himself up and see more of the entertainment value in writing, but those moments are few and far between. Craig Robinson and Titus Burgess are just there to make jokes, and they were good jokes, but most of them revolved around their performances, not necessarily the writing, so sometimes they did still kind of feel like token characters. And the way the movie was directed felt kind of standard. I mean, in terms of the style, you do have 70s costume design, you have a lot of urban sets, and of course, the insanely good soundtrack of stuff like Marvin Gaye and many other talented artists. But in terms of, like, cinematography and staging, I felt like you could have used some of the stylistic traits that you would see in blaxploitation movies. You know, get the audience to think, this is cheesy but fun, I want to check out more movies like this. But you don't really get those moments. It's a lot of standard coverage, and I felt like they could have taken a bit of an advantage of that. I saw Dolemite Is My Name at the perfect time, and I urge any of you, if there's a theater that will show it, because it is a Netflix movie, it'll have a short theatrical run, do see it. You'll have a good time. You'll be able to react with the audience as it's going on, a feeling that you can't really get sitting at home. Eddie Murphy is at his prime in this movie, and it is so well written in terms of capturing what it's like to be an outsider and struggling to create anything, but still doing whatever it takes to get there. And for that reason, I'm going to give Dolemite Is My Name a 4 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. I know this is the last film that I've seen, but I haven't done Cherry Lane yet. I'm still kind of processing Cherry Lane, so I'll probably make that video this upcoming weekend. Look forward to that. Be sure to like, subscribe, check out my other reviews at noperfectmovie.com, and once again, thank you all very much for watching. Take care.